Hi, everyone. Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so you can get the most out of your practice, eliminate self-sabotage, and take the action that you want. If you have not done so already, we have a free 10-part guide that is waiting for you at tappingqa.com, which we will show you how to use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. Every single day you get another part. There's audios, there's videos, there's tapping scripts, there's instructions, but every single day you get a little bite-sized morsel of information that you can use right away to improve your tapping and to eliminate self-sabotage. Tappingqa.com, click on the big blue button. If you happen to be listening to this right now on the website, up in that right-hand column, you'll see a blue button right there. You can get the free guide there as well. Also, if you did not check out last week's episode, that's episode 361. If you go to tappingpodcast.com, click on episode 361. We shared 3 different stories of people who have been using EFT in their own life and the success that they have had because of that. Hearing stories from others is really important because there are lessons to be learned from them. And at the exact same time, we are in a situation where we're able to be encouraged and recognize what is possible. It's good for us to see that so we can have a path forward for our own transformation as well. Episode 361, tappingpodcast.com, click on episode 361. A couple months from now, I'm actually going to be sharing more stories. So if you have a story of transformation in your life, and as you heard from last week, we can share who you are, we can keep you anonymous. You can just send me a note, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com, if you would be interested in sharing your tapping journey with me and our entire community. This is Gene Monterostelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 362, originally aired May 8th, 2019. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about and tapping about feeling emotions and feeling bad for feeling those emotions. And I actually have a client story that's going to lead us into this that I think will be really helpful for you in recognizing your own emotional experience and how we can use some tapping to transform that. Before we do that, every single week this year, we have been thanking people from all over the world who are listening to the podcast as well as supporting the podcast. Today, I'd like to thank the folks in Kuwait, Nigeria, Taiwan, Zimbabwe, Brunei, and China for listening to the show. Thank you very much for doing that. I'd also like to send a shout out to Lisa. Lisa was the most recent supporter of the Tapping Q&A podcast. Because of that, Lisa gets a bunch of awesome bonuses. If you'd like to receive some amazing bonuses and support the podcast so we can do some more ambitious stuff like we did last week with the first person stories, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. You will get an opportunity to get access to all those extra bonuses, as well as ensuring the podcast continues at the level that we are at so we can keep doing more and growing. Also, for those of you who are supporters of the podcast, if you have been having trouble downloading the bonus podcast, send me an email so we can make sure that you are getting all of that extra free content that we put out every single month. Recently, I have been working with one of my clients who is pregnant, and it is a pregnancy that is happening later in life. And so there are certainly some medical concerns as she is going through this entire process. And it is not her first child. And she was in a circumstance where one of the child's births was a little more complicated after the fact and dealing with all the emotional response to all of that. She is great. She is healthy. The baby is great. Everything is looking really, really good. Other than the fact that she still hasn't agreed that Gene is both a good name for a boy or a girl, but we're working on that. That's a side note. But in the process of being pregnant, in the conversations we were having, she was super overwhelmed with all of the emotions of the circumstance that she is in, which is obviously compounded by the physical drain of being pregnant. It impacts the resource of the body and all of the biochemical and hormonal changes that are going on inside of her body so that she can grow this human being inside of her. Like all of that is this really amazing thing, but it was impacting her in the moment. So in addition to being super emotional, she was feeling really bad because she was feeling emotional. She was feeling as if she was failing as a mother because she was frustrated and overwhelmed and scared and sad and tired and disappointed. Because what is happening is amazing. And she and her husband and the other kids are going to love this baby to death. Like it's just an awesome family. I know the family and I'm just excited for all of them. And she's able in moments to go, this is great. And I feel all of these emotions, therefore I must be failing. And so it's important for us to recognize, not just in the circumstance that she is in, but the circumstances that all of us are in, is that emotions are not the enemy. And the fact that we are feeling emotions does not mean that we have failed. Emotions are just information. And they are information about the thoughts we are having, about the experience we're having. And it's our system just trying to let us know how we are interpreting that. Now, there's a couple of degrees of separation from our experience, which we can talk about, and you'll notice the word interpretation in there, which is the reason why we try and transform and evolve our emotions to be more accurate to where we are. So emotions are very simple. The way it works is the first thing that happens is we have an experience. We're navigating the world, we see someone, we talk to someone, we encounter something. What is followed from that experience is a thought. And the thought is us interpreting what the experience is. The barista this morning gave me a free croissant with my coffee because she gave me a free croissant. I feel happy. So there's an experience. I was given something that I thought about. This was a nice thing for someone to do. Therefore, I had the emotion that came after that made me feel happy. The exact same thing happens when we experience danger. I see a tiger. I think tigers are dangerous. They have really big teeth and sharp claws, and they like to eat things that are meat. I feel afraid. Most of the time, we do not realize the thought that is happening. The thought just happens almost instantaneously, and the emotion immediately falls after the fact. And so because of this, it's really easy for us to feel like we are having an experience and then there's an emotion. And so the emotion is our evaluation of what is going on. But the emotion is the consequence of what is going on. And it's just information. And so when we are tapping, our goal is to make sure that we have well-informed, proportionate emotional responses. You know, the really simple example of fear. I should have a different level of fear when I am at the zoo, depending on if I am standing inside the lion cage or standing outside the lion cage. Now, my proximity to that creature might only change by 3 or 4 feet from being inside the cage and being outside of the cage. But the amount of danger that I am in is radically different from being inside the cage and outside of the cage. And if I'm feeling the same level of fear outside of the cage that I feel inside of the cage, well, that emotion is now disproportionate because I'm actually safe outside of the cage, even though it's close. Now, it's good that I'm on guard, making sure that the gate isn't open and something surprising doesn't happen because there is danger nearby, but I'm safe from that danger. And so the emotion is just trying to point out what is going on. And so when we are tapping, we are not making a value judgment about the emotion. We're not saying the emotion is good. We're not saying the emotion is bad. We're just trying to calibrate that emotion to be apparent and equal to what is going on in this particular moment. And so my pregnant friend is in a circumstance where those emotions of fear and overwhelm and desperation and all of that is just thoughts of concern that are being followed by the emotional consequence of what those thoughts are. And so she is not failing. because she's feeling those emotions. And the emotions are not the enemy, even though they feel so bad in the moment. They are a consequence of what that particular experience is. And so, when we encounter really extreme emotions like that we want to transform so we can be more present in the moment, it's important we're not fighting with the emotions, because if we're fighting with the emotions are going to fight back. And what I mean by fight back is they're going to entrench themselves, because the emotions are an information system that are trying to keep us aware. When I feel fear, it's trying to say, hey, this is dangerous. And if I'm disregarding that danger signal, the part that's going to try and keep me safe is going to speak louder and louder and louder, because it wants me to hear insistently that this is dangerous. And so for years, I have used the phrase, make our issues our allies. And in this circumstance, even though the emotion isn't the issue, it is our ally, because it is trying to help us to see and recognize what it perceives as a problem. And as we know, sometimes it's perceiving things wrong, and that's why we tap, is to move our perception back to a place where it is good and useful and thoughtful for us to move forward in a way where we see really and truly what is going on, what is safe, what is dangerous, so that we can make good, thoughtful choices. So today, what I want to do, now that we have that understanding, is just take a few moments and tap around this idea of the emotions are not the enemy, that they are useful, and when we're tapping, we're transforming them. And so anytime that you are supercharged with an emotion, this almost becomes the perfect preamble to set up a tapping session. But I'd encourage you to do it right now, to just reinforce and remind yourself of what you know about your emotions as being this helpful thing that are simply working too hard some of the time. So to begin with, I want you to just tap on the side of your hand, take a nice big deep breath for me. Continue tapping on the side of the hand, take another nice big deep breath. And just move from tapping point to tapping point, repeating after me. I recognize the fact that my emotions are information. I recognize the fact I feel emotions to understand the world. My emotions are an internal guidance system. My emotions' sole objective is to keep me safe and healthy. My emotions are simply trying to communicate information. My emotions are not the enemy. It is not a failing for me to feel emotions. I also understand sometimes my emotions overfunction. Sometimes my emotions are too large for the situation. Sometimes my emotions are misinformed as to what is really going on. And when this happens, my emotions are really big. When this happens, my emotions are overwhelming. When this happens, it feels as if my emotions are too much. just because I feel emotions that are too large, it does not mean I am failing. It does not mean I am doing this wrong. It does not mean I am emotionally immature. It simply means the information system that is my emotions is working too hard and over-functioning. When this happens, it is possible to return my emotions to a regular state. This does not mean I am emotionless. This does not mean I am thoughtless. This does not mean I am careless. It only means I am returning my emotions to their natural state. Because emotions are not the enemy. And emotions have never been the enemy. My emotions are just pieces of information. And by taking a few minutes to tap, I am simply returning those emotions to a proportionate, regulated state. Even though my emotional states aren't always fun, I'm glad I feel the emotion. Because it is information that is trying to keep me safe. Take a nice big deep breath. Now, if we were tapping on that and something came to mind that would be useful for you to tap on again, hit pause right now, write that thing down. I find it always really important in the middle of a tapping session when information comes forward, because sometimes it can evaporate really quickly, to grab a hold of it, because that could be useful for us to tap on right now or tap on at a later date. But as you can see, that tapping is really straightforward. Just simple statements about what we believe about emotions and what we know about emotions and how they are useful to us. And so I would really encourage you to take the printed out version of this and put it someplace where you can find it, or link this particular audio. If you have downloaded the Tapping Q&A app, which is free, you can find it in both the Android, Google, and in the Apple App Store. If all of the tapping scripts that we include in the podcast, if you go into the tech section of that app, there's a printed out version of this tapping script. So you don't have to come and find it in the audio if you don't want to. You just have access to the script right there on your phone. Again, absolutely free. Just search Tapping Q&A in your various app stores. I will include a link in the show notes so you can go and get that for free. But it's really straightforward. And you can see how acknowledging what emotions are is going to take the edge off of what you're feeling, which is going to make your next tapping session after tapping on this so much more productive, because you're going to see the problem clearly and you're not going to be fighting with the emotions. And you're going to be able to go, okay, great, this is information. What information does this have for me? Which is going to make your transformation for the rest of tapping you do so much more powerful, because it's going to be more accurate going after what the real problem actually is. If you know someone in your life who could use this little conversation about emotions, even if they're not a tapping person and they're not going to use the tapping script, I'm sure you know someone who, if they understood why they were having their emotional responses and why we have a rich emotional life, it will make their life better. Please share the podcast. As you know, My goal is this year is to get 9 new people tapping every single day as a community. If we do that, we'll have 3,000 new tappers in this world. I want you to think about an arena with 3,000 seats in it. If all of those people were tapping, the rippling effects that would be going out, not just in their lives, but the lives that they touch, which means it is our lives as well. So please pass this along. We're trying to get 9 a day. It will make all the difference in the world for all of us. It will make the world a better place. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, I'm actually in the process of doing a whole bunch of new interviews, and I have this great list of interview subjects who have come from recommendations of either topics or people from listeners just like you. I'm always looking for new content. If you have an idea, please reach out. Gene, Gene at tappingqa.com. I love having just all sorts of interesting, amazing guests. It enriches all of our lives. And some of my favorite interviews and some of my favorite topics I never would have thought of, but it's only because of someone just like you letting me know. You can get all of our past episodes absolutely free. You can listen on Spotify and Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn. Very soon, within the next week or so, we're also going to be on Pandora. You can listen to the show on your Alexa. If you go to tappingpodcast.com, there's instructions on how to add that to your smart speaker at home. So while you're doing dishes or cleaning up, you can listen through that as well. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrastelli or Tapping Q&A.